Hello everyone, this is Shannon for Waffle Flower Crafts. Today we're going to do some no-line coloring with the water media mat to create this super adorable birthday card that is also interactive with a pull tab and a hidden bunny. To start, I have the We Heard stamp set. This adorable set was illustrated by Liz Meitinger. I'm going to use the herd of bunnies as well as some balloons from this set. To start, because we're doing some no-line coloring, I'm going to ink up these images with Distress Ink Antique Linen, a very light ink that will kind of basically go away once we do our coloring with distress inks later. So I stamped it a couple times just to make it a little bit bolder so I could see, and then I repeated some of the balloons and then one of the end bunnies, because that end bunny is actually going to be our hidden bunny behind the herd. Right there, he's going to be our end bunny. So like I said, I'm going to do some watercoloring, but I'm going to use distress inks. What I love about the water media mat is that the little wells are the perfect size for your ink cube. So I just picked out a bunch of distressing colors and then smushed them in each one of the wells. I then spritz some water down onto the mat. I like to add only a small amount of water to the distress inks when I'm coloring. So by spraying it on the mat, I get these little droplets and I can really see how much water I'm adding to my brush. So I want to point out that I am using Bristol paper. This is not watercolor paper, it's Bristol paper. If you're unfamiliar with Bristol paper, it has a smoother texture and it holds up a little bit better to the watercoloring than regular cardstock would. But again, I am using very little water. It's not like watercolor paper. It can't handle lots of water, but just a small amount of water that I'm adding to these distress inks is perfect. So basically what I do is I add a little bit of water to whatever distress ink color I choose, go straight direct to paper with the slightly diluted ink, and I'll usually start right at the edge of something wherever I want the darkest point, and then I'll clean my brush a little bit and kind of blend that ink out so I get a nice kind of gradation. Often I'll have to go back over, especially for really light colors like the antique linen, I'll have to go back over with another kind of coat just to make it a little darker in those shadow areas, so I do create that illusion of shape. The distress ink colors I'm using are Weathered Wood, Antique Linen, Tea Dye, and Tumbled Glass. I'm using those four colors to color the rabbit's fur. The Tumbled Glass, which is actually a blue color, is the color I like to use to add a shadow on the white rabbits. Once I finish with the fur, I move on to Sponge Sugar, which is a really light pink, and I use that color to color in the ears, the cheeks, as well as the nose. And now I moved on to kind of bringing back out those features, the whiskers, mouths, and eyes. I'm using a dark gray here. This is Pumice Stone. The brush I'm using to do those fine details is actually a round 0. Now I'm going to move on to the balloons. Again, I paint the edges first with like my darkest color and then kind of blend out. I went ahead and finished all the balloons as well as die cut them out with the matching dies. I also die cut the bunnies out, but the way the die works is it doesn't cut out the bottom part, so I'm just going to trim that bottom part off, leave it a little bit of extra room so it's easier to glue. Same thing for this little bunny guy here, and I will finish cutting off the other bunny on the side of him, just fussy cut that out with a pair of scissors, trying to mimic that little leftover white space of the paper, just like the die creates. Now I have the picture frame die set here. I took the largest die from this set and just die cut the frame out of white cardstock, and now I'm going to kind of make it look like wood. I have Antique Linen here, Distress Ink. This is a light ink, so I'm going over it just very lightly, kind of colors the surface of the ink. And by going directly with the ink pad to the paper, I get these really beautiful kind of rough, scratchy look. I think that mimics wood pretty nicely. And now I'm taking tea dye and just adding a little bit more color. I do kind of angle the little ink pad to kind of match the angles, the kind of mitered edge on the frame when I add that ink to the paper. Now moving on to some of my background scenery pieces. I have an A2 panel, and then I have a couple of like grass shrubs and greenery die cut with those 2 scenery dies. And I'm now going to ink blend on them to add them color. I have 2 distress oxides here. First is Twisted Citron. I'm going to ink blend that at the top very quickly. of both of these kind of shrubbery mounds. Then I'll take mowed lawn here and blend it at the very bottom. I'm using a little piece of scrap paper to kind of hold that shrubbery in place here, just to give myself something to hold on. These papers do stay pretty much in place on the mat, but this is more for me just being able, I need to put my hands on it. That's just how I feel more secure. And so I'm ink blending that just to make a nice little gradation on these two shrubbery pieces. And now I'm going to layer them up. And I noticed that the back shrubbery, it just looks like twisted citron. That's the only thing I saw, so I blended a little bit more mowed lawn on top. Now for this second piece of greenery or grass, I'm just blending mowed lawn onto the little kind of sprout-like things. Those really reminded me of the tops of carrots, so I'm going to add those in to the shrubbery later. Now for this A2 panel, I'm just creating the sky here, so I have Distress Oxide Tumbled glass, and I'm starting at the very top and going to just create a nice soft gradation so I have a little kind of ombre sky. And this is really easy to do with the Distress Oxides. They're really they're really great for getting a nice smooth blend. So once I finish that, I'm kind of ready to start putting things together here. I'm just going to kind of put this together so you can see how it's going to go, and so I can start kind of figuring out where to glue things. I'm going to trim down those little carrot top sprouts, is what I'm calling them, just so I have a couple and I can kind of tuck them here and there between the two shrubbery layers. So once I kind of figure out where I want those to go, I'm going to pull these things back apart and start gluing them together. I'm using Tumbled multi-liquid adhesive here. I just glued the very edge, and then I put a little bit of glue on those carrot tops and kind of tucked them in. I'm going to do a little bit more here, add another two little tops, and then I will add one to the very back of the big shrub. And this is just nice, kind of breaks it up a little bit and adds a little bit more interest. Now I'm going to just glue those rabbits that I no-line watercolored right to those green pieces, and then I'm going to add some foam tape to the back side, making sure to leave open the left side for my little bunny to hide down into when the pull tab is completely flush with the frame. Now I'm just going to put things back together so I can figure out exactly where I want that bunny to be when the pull tab is fully extended. So I'm kind of getting him figured out. I want him just above so you can see his little hands. And once I figure out where I want him to go, I'll take my pencil here and kind of mark out the bottom of him. And that is just going to help me better understand where I need to place the track. So this is the track die. It's from the Pull Tabs die set. And I'm going to die cut this for the pull tab. And I want to make sure that the track is still hidden by the rabbit, so I just kept checking and making sure. Now I don't want to die cut this track completely out, so I'm going to do a partial die cut. So I'm going to take my top plate and stop just about 1/4 of an inch away from the bottom, and that will make sure that track doesn't cut completely through, so my pull tab will stop. It won't come completely out of the card stock. So now I'm going to go ahead and glue down our picture frame, just again using that Tumbled multi-liquid adhesive here, and just kind of glue that down. I like the liquid glue just because it gives me a little bit of wiggle room to make sure I get everything perfectly placed. And now I'm going to grab this tab die from the Pull Tabs die set and die cut the little tab out of the top. I'm kind of just eyeballing it here. I want to make sure that the tab is centered over the track, so I'm just drawing an imaginary line from the track up to it, and then I went ahead and die cut it out with my die cutting machine. It might have to go a couple times because I am cutting through 2 layers of cardstock, so just be mindful of that. Now I have the pull tab and the little bridge piece here. So the way this pull tab works is these little flaps here open up. So I'm just going to open those up. They have little score lines on them so that they kind of fold back nice and easy. And I'm going to take these little flaps and feed them through the slits here that were created with the track die. It's pretty easy to get that first flap through one of the slits, but for the other one I found that I need something to kind of help me feed it through, so I found my tweezers are very helpful for this. They can kind of help get that little end through there, and then you can kind of work it and shimmy it till it gets through the track. So now I've got both my little flaps through the track, and I'm now going to fan them out so they're nice and wide. So I really kind of press them out And I'm now going to take that little bridge piece here, this tiny little piece, and I'm going to glue it on top of those flaps that I just fanned out. Now here's where it gets a little, you have to be very kind of careful with your glue. So I just double checked to make sure everything was moving clearly, but with the glue you want to make sure you get it only on the little flaps. None of the glue can get on to the close to the track. So be very careful, kind of place that glue at the very edge of those little flaps, and then stick down your bridge. And I just kind of double check and make sure it's moving clearly, and I'm going to let that dry just a second here. And while that's drying, I'm going to figure out the kind of back support. So I cut another frame with the picture frame die out of white cardstock, and I just figured out where that top notch is going to be and cut that out, that opening out. This frame here, as well as some other cardstock, is just going to provide some support for the pull tab so it can move really nice and cleanly. So now I am trying to figure out where exactly I need to glue down that rabbit onto that pull tab so he is the right height that I want him when the pull tab's fully extended. And I realized that my what I left on the rabbit wasn't quite enough, so I glued a little strip of scrap paper cardstock to him. So now I have a little bit more cardstock there to make sure he's as high as I want him. Trim off the excess here, and now I'll actually glue the rabbit down onto the pull tab. Again, use some liquid glue here, let it set a little bit, double check. I keep double checking, making sure, I want to make sure this is the time to make sure everything's the way you want it while that glue is still tacky and you can kind of fix it. And I did double check and make sure that rabbit is still hidden behind the herd of rabbits. Now I went ahead and trimmed off the excess of the pull tab. To do this, you want to make sure the pull tab is completely pushed down, and then I just grabbed a pair of scissors and trimmed it off. Now I'm going to glue that little tab onto the pull tab using some liquid glue while it's completely pushed down. The pull tab is completely pushed down, just to make sure everything is lined up when the pull tab is down. So now it's time to kind of put together the back supports. So I have that frame here. I'm going to glue that down. I made an opening at the top for the pull tab, but I really also need to make an opening at the bottom so when the pull tab's closed, it doesn't butt into the frame. I realized that after the fact, but that was a pretty easy fix. And then I have a little strips of cardstock here. I'm just going to glue those. These kind of work as like a channel just to keep that pull tab right and straight between them. So they're just really nice to kind of keep the pull tab really straight and running smoothly. So I just glued those down on either side of the pull tab, and now I'm going to glue this on to my card front. So you just want to be mindful where you're placing the glue. Don't place any glue on the pull tab at all. You can place it on all of the back supports, so that frame and those two little strips of cardstock that I added on either side of the pull tab, and then just stick it down onto the card front. And again, I always double check here and there. I'm constantly checking, making sure everything is still moving. It would be a real shame to get this card completely put together and then realize that your pull tab didn't work. So I just removed the backing on the rabbits layer, just removed the backing on the foam tape and stuck that down. Again, checking again to make sure. Now I'm going to finish up this card by adding some strings to these balloons. I just cut a piece of thread, and then I'm going to take some foam tape and kind of sandwich that string to the back side of the balloon with the foam tape. I also stamped a sentiment onto a speech bubble cut with the really handy Speech Bubbles die set, and the sentiment is from the We Heard stamp set, and I stamped it in Pumice Stone Distress ink. I again added some foam tape to the back of it and just stuck it down, adjusting it a little bit so when the bunny is pulled out, the speech bubble is right next to him. Now I'm going to position all my balloons. I'll remove the backing on each one, on the foam tape on each one of those, and now to finish, I'm going to take some hot glue and place a little dab on one of the bunny's paws or hands, and just kind of take my tweezers and kind of tuck this the thread down into that glue so it kind of holds it in place. And I did that for two bunnies, so two bunnies are holding those balloons. And now I'll just trim off the excess here with a pair of scissors. And that actually completes my card. So I will pull it up here and let you guys check on it. And I don't know if you can see the little mistake I made here, but I realize it just as I start to pull that pull tab again. So it's definitely important for me to check. But as you can see here, that balloon is in the way. So I got to adjust the balloons here a little bit. I kind of forgot that I need to save a space open for the bunny to come completely out. So I just moved those balloons around. Luckily, the foam tape was easy. I wasn't like totally stuck down, so I was able to kind of adjust those balloons. And that completes the card. You can see here the bunny is hidden when the pull tab's closed, and when you pull it, he pops out. It's a really fun, cute card. I love the soft look of the no-line watercoloring. It's just such a fun and different look to your cards. And I also love all the layers and the textures that we got by creating that wood frame and layering up the shrubs and the balloons and the strings. There's just a lot of fun things in this card. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you want any more information on the products I used, please visit Waffle Flower, and you can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook for more creative ideas. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day.